What is going on, everybody? This is James Krasnerick, and I am back for another segment of Real Steel Sports on Spreaker Web Radio. I apologize for not having done much of anything this NFL season. It's been kind of a tumultuous fall and a pretty abysmal couple of weeks in my personal life lately, and I'm trying to get things sorted out, but I'm slowly getting back on track, and what better way to do that than to give you, my loyal listeners, as much playoff talk as you want. Anyways, this is the first game I'm going to preview for the NFL postseason of 2016. The Washington Redskins hosting the Green Bay Packers. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. This will be the last of the 4 playoff games this weekend. Kickoff time is Sunday at 4:40 from FedEx Field. Temperature supposed to be in the mid-50s with a chance of rain. The Packers are 1-point favorites, and the spread is 45 points. The over-under is 45 points. The Packers started off the season white hot. For the first 6 weeks, they were considered by many experts to go through the NFC and win the Super Bowl. They beat teams that would end up being in the playoffs, like Kansas City, like Seattle. And after that, the bottom kind of fell out, losing 3 straight to Denver and Carolina and Detroit, and then ultimately to finish 4-6 after starting 6-0. It was definitely a cause for concern. Aaron Rodgers, again, another Pro Bowl season, completing 347 of 572 passes, which amounts to 60.7%, which is the worst in his career in years that he has started, for most of the games. So his completion percentage has taken a hit. 31 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, 3,800 yards. Sacked 46 times, and in the double-digit total in the last 2 weeks against Arizona and Minnesota. Both losses in which Green Bay was outscored 58-21. Unbelievable. The thing about the Packers, when they started off 6-0, their defense was getting turnovers. They only had 4 turnovers through 6 games. And then after that, they have kind of fallen off the map a little bit, and they're averaging just over 20 points a game since the game in Denver, since the start of the game in Denver. The Packers this year, 15th in points scored, 12th in points allowed, pretty respectable. 23rd in yards, that's a surprising total for a team with that many offensive playmakers. 25th in passing yards, the biggest surprise. 12th in rushing. Now, on the defensive side of the football, they do get turnovers. +5 in the turnover differential, 6th in passing yardage, which is respectable in today's day and age, but 21st against the run. And in their last 6 games, they've allowed each opponent to rush for at least 101 yards, and 4 of those opponents hit 120. What that says is that this team has struggled at times stopping the run. Also on this team, you've got wide receiver Randall Cobb, 829 yards and 6 touchdowns. Tight end Richard Rodgers tied with James Jones, who's a wide receiver, with the team lead in 8 receiving touchdowns apiece. Eddie Lacy, the leading rusher, 758 yards and 3 touchdowns. And on the defensive side, 16 interceptions, including 3 players tied for the team lead. Demarius Randall with 3, Micah Hyde with 3, and Sam Shields with 3 as well. Leading sacker Julius Peppers, 10.5. The 35-year-old linebacker who was formerly a Panther and a Bear. The Packers are a team that likes to try to outscore their opponents, but if they have to play a little nitty-gritty, they can do that. However, even though they had a white-hot start to the year, losing 6 of their last 10, including 3 home games in the division, really did hurt them. Now, on the flip side, you have their opponent, who was the complete opposite of this team this year, the Washington Redskins. They come into this game at 9-7, highlighted by an offense ranking 10th in scoring and a defense 17th in points allowed, a very respectable season. 17th in yards, 28th allowed in terms of yards allowed. And they are a defense that also gets turnovers, 27, which is the 8th best total in the league. And they also are very good at forcing fumbles. They have recovered 16 opposing fumbles, which is good for best in the NFL. They started off the year poorly. They were 2-4 at one point, 3-5, and then 5-7. And there were a lot of questions in the NFC East who was going to win it, because the Cowboys were 4-8, the Eagles and the Giants were also 5-7. But the Redskins strung together 4 wins, albeit none against playoff opponents. But you have to give them credit for stringing together games and getting the job done. And if you look at the way that they did it, was throwing the football. 11th in passing yardage, and their running game with Alfred Morris, which is usually such a big part of their team, was only 20th in yards this year. But the real key of this team was Kirk Cousins, the fourth-year quarterback out of Michigan State. The funny thing was, when RG3 was drafted, number 2 overall in 2012, Mike Shanahan at the time took Kirk Cousins in the 3rd round in a surprise move. But it proved to play dividends this year, with Jay Gruden, the now current head coach, sitting RG3 in favor of Kirk Cousins. Kirk went on to complete 379 of 543 passes for a league-leading completion percentage of 69.8%. 29 touchdowns, only 11 picks, QBR of 70.05, and a pass rating over 100. And, well, he has proven to be very, very good at what he's done at playing the position. He leads his team with 5 rushing touchdowns, too. On a team with Alfred Morris and Matt Jones, 2 talented running backs, that's pretty impressive. Leading receivers for the Redskins, team leader in catches is tight end Jordan Reed with 87 catches, and he also leads the team in receiving yards and receiving touchdowns. 952 yards, 11 touchdowns. Also on that list, 72 catches and 6 scores for Pierre Garçon, 30 catches and 4 scores for Deshaun Jackson, albeit he has been injured a lot this year, and that has hampered his productivity. But when he has played, he's been very effective. On the defensive side, again, 3 players have tied for the team lead with 2 picks: Perry Riley, Will Blackman, and Bashad Breeland. And in terms of sacks, 9.5 sacks, team lead for linebacker Ryan Kerrigan. The Washington Redskins are a team that pride themselves in pretty much just hanging in there. Because if you look at a lot of the games they won this year, beating the Eagles by a field goal, beating the Buccaneers by 1 point, beating the Giants by a touchdown, beating the Bears by 3 points, and just the way that they've hung tough and won big games. And the fact is there have been some games where they have looked very, very well. And I would like to point out that in the last 3 weeks of the season, they put up 35, 38, and 34 points respectively on offense. 3 very impressive showings against non-playoff teams, albeit, but still enough to clinch the NFC East. They were the 3rd pick for me to win the NFC East going into the season, and also whenever every team in that division but the Cowboys was 5-7. So to really make an impact in a run and to do what they did is nothing short of impressive. Now, the last time these 2 teams played each other, the Packers won I believe it was the 2nd week of the 2013 season, 38-20 in Green Bay. Now, things were very, very different the last time these 2 teams played. The Packers were better on offense. The Redskins were still kind of mired their mistakes, and they were still starting RG3. In that game, RG3 was 26 of 40 for 320 and 3 scores, but Rodgers lit up the Redskins defense to the tune of 480 yards and 4 scores and no picks. However, key differences in that game: tight end Jermichael Finley and wide receiver Jordy Nelson, who caught 3 of Rodgers' 4 touchdown passes, are not here in this game. James Starks, he has been a contributor this year, but not to the degree that he was in this game, $132 and a touchdown. And if you look at it, the Redskins are a little bit more offensively adept than they were in that game, and they were that season. Because if you look at that Redskins team, in 2013, they finished 23rd in points. I mean, that kind of speaks volume, coming off a playoff appearance. Now, this game is going to be a very tough one for Green Bay to win. I'll tell you why. Because if you just look at what they've done the last 7-8 weeks of the season, and if you look at, how they have played, their offense has been sputtering big time. I mean, 3 points against the Vikings, 8 against the Cardinals, 13 against the Bears on Thanksgiving, a game that none of us saw coming, 16 at home against the Detroit Lions. To put that in perspective, the last time before this year the Lions beat the Packers in Green Bay, I wasn't even born yet. It was the year before I was born the last time that happened. That's not something that any of us were expecting this year, because a lot of people felt Green Bay could be a 13 or 14 win team and Detroit was going to be a bottom feeder. Now, Detroit did turn it on at the end of the year and played good, but that's besides the point. The keys in this game are this. The Packers have to beat coverage. The last few times that the Packers put up good offensive scoring numbers, it was against teams that played a little softer in coverage and gave the receiver some space. Without Jordy Nelson, Randall Cobb and James Joe's been attracting all kind of attention everywhere they go, and Rodgers is having to force balls in the places he's never had to before. He's never had to make so many accurate throws. His pick total has not gone up, but his incompletion total has. Completing 60% of his passes when you're averaging in the mid to high 60s, that's a big change for you. Tight man-to-man coverage has been giving the Packers receivers fits all season long. And Washington, again, their schemes, I'm unaware of what scheme that they do run. But in watching some of the games that they've played this year, they have played somewhat tighter coverage, so that could be a problem for the Packers. Now, as for the Redskins, it's this. If they're going to win this football game, they are going to have to be aggressive and take some chances, because Kirk Cousins this year, 29 touchdowns and only 11 interceptions, that's as good of a season a Redskins quarterback has ever put together. In fact, if you actually go back and look at all the great passing seasons by Redskins quarterbacks, he set a team record with 4,166 yards. He tied Joe Theismann's 1983 total with 29 touchdowns, being the second best in team history next to Sonny Jurgensen's 31. Completion percentage amongst quarterbacks that started at least 16 games, he had the highest completion percentage in team history. And his passer rating was as good as any passer in the history of the Redskins for a single season. He went out there and he was straight out balling this year. He really was. Looking at the Redskins defense, this is going to be key, because this Redskins team prides themselves on turnovers. They're not a team that's going to intercept the football. They're a team that's going to get the ball loose. 38 sacks is a respectable total, and they have received sacks from 11 different players. So they're the kind of defense where they're not going to have one guy go after you, but they are going to get a bunch of guys that can get after the quarterback. They have guys that can do that. You've got really decent players in all three phases of the game. Linebacker Ryan Kerrigan's a really good outside linebacker. You got Terrence Knighton, who's a very solid defensive tackle. Deshaun Goldson's a good safety, a former All-Pro. So it's going to be a tough task for Green Bay. The problem for the Redskins is this. Can they stop the Packers' offense? Now, I understand what I said about Green Bay. They've averaged 20 points a game over the last 6-7 games. What that tells me is that they are having trouble scoring, but they have had some games where they've been solid over the last month of the season. They did put up 28 on Dallas. They did put up 27 in Detroit, albeit 7 being a Hail Mary at the end of the game. And they did put up 30 in Oakland. So they've had games where they've put up some decent totals. But are they going to be able to do it against the Redskins? Now, the Redskins' defense, although it has been solid and 17th in points allowed, they've held only 5 opponents to under 20 points, and they've allowed 4 teams to hit 30 on them. Tampa, New York, the Jets, Tampa, both New York teams, mind you, and the Panthers. When they allow 25 or more points a game, they're 1-5. They are 2-5. They're 7-2 when they don't allow more than 25 points a game. So they've got to kind of keep Green Bay in that total. Ultimately, I'm going with the upset in this game. I'm picking the Washington Redskins for this reason, because Green Bay at home has looked horrible this year. They lost all 3 of their division opponents, and they didn't even score 20 points in any of those games. A stat line that for an Aaron Rodgers-led offense is kind of surprising. Because when you think about it, there's really not much to say other than they've been prolific as hell the last 4 or 5 seasons. Because if you look at what the Packers have done since Aaron Rodgers became a starting quarterback, again they've only been held under 400 points a season twice, and twice they've gone over 480 points, including a 560-point performance in 2011. Knowing this, it doesn't matter, because right now Green Bay is in a rut, and the Redskins are one of the hottest teams in the league. It's almost reminiscent of what the Cardinals did in 2008, I want to say, 2008 when they went to the Super Bowl. They had a really good offense. A lot of people kind of wrote them off, but they still surprised people. They upset the Falcons. The Falcons thought the Falcons were going to beat them in Arizona, destroyed the Panthers, upset the Eagles, and almost won the Super Bowl against my Steelers. I'm going with the Redskins to win this game. I'm going with a stat line of, I'm thinking 28-24. I think Green Bay gets their licks in. I do. I think they get their points. But I think this is a really big game for Kirk Cousins, and I think he steps up to the plate and he shows why Jay Gruden picked him over RG3. Anyways, I'm going to be doing more sports previews throughout the day, so if you guys are interested, please be sure to stay tuned. You guys take care, and have a good one, everybody.